The morning I realized I couldn't feel my left side, I thought I was dreaming. I remember trying to reach for my phone, watching my own arm refuse to obey me. My body, once reliable and strong, had become a prison. "Help," I whispered, though no one was there to hear me. It was my son Louis who found me 12 hours later, slumped against the bathroom door. I remember his face twisting with concern as he called the ambulance. I remember thinking, thank God for my children. How naive I was. The hospital days blurred together, white ceilings, beeping machines, and the constant smell of antiseptic. The doctors spoke around me rather than to me, using words like significant damage and long-term rehabilitation. I was 58 years old, and suddenly I was being treated like a child. "Mom, we're handling everything," my daughter Emma would say, patting my hand. Her diamond ring caught the fluorescent light, the same ring I had helped her husband choose 2 years earlier. "You just focus on getting better." My youngest, Dylan, rarely visited. When he did, he was always looking at his phone, asking the doctors questions about my prognosis and mental faculties. I understood the gravity of my situation. The stroke had affected my speech and mobility, but my mind remained clear, something my children seemed to conveniently overlook. I could see the whispered conversations in hallways, the significant glances exchanged over my hospital bed. After 3 weeks, I was moved to a rehabilitation center. That's when I first noticed something was wrong with my finances. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Taylor, but your card has been declined," the nurse said when I tried to pay for the premium cable package, my small luxury during recovery. "That's impossible," I said, my words still slightly slurred. "Try again." She did. Same result. I called the bank the next day, struggling through the frustrating automated system with my impaired speech. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Taylor, but your accounts have a hold on them," the representative said. "It says here there's a pending guardianship petition. You'll need to speak with the court-appointed attorney." "What guardianship?" I asked, my heart suddenly racing. There was a pause. "It says here the petition was filed by Louis Taylor, Emma Wilson, and Dylan Taylor. My children." My own children had filed to take control of my life without even telling me. That night, I lay awake in my hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. I had raised them alone after their father left when Dylan was only 3. I had worked 2 jobs to send them to good schools. I had been both mother and father, attending every soccer game, every dance recital, every science fair. I had postponed my own dreams so theirs could flourish, and this was how they repaid me. The next day, Emma brought flowers and acted as if nothing had happened. I decided to play along. "The doctor says you're making progress, Mom," she said brightly. "But he thinks you'll need assistance for a while. We're thinking of selling the house. It's too big for you now anyway, and finding a nice assisted living." I placed my house, the one I had spent 20 years paying off, the home where I had raised them. "Oh," I said, feigning confusion, "but where will all my things go?" "Don't worry about that," Emma said, patting my hand again as if I were a child. "Louis and I have been sorting through everything. We've already found some beautiful pieces for my dining room, and Dylan's taking your car since you won't be driving anymore." They were dividing my possessions while I lay recovering. The betrayal burned like acid in my chest. "That's thoughtful," I managed to say. Over the next few weeks, I played their game. I pretended to be more confused than I was. I acted grateful for their help, and all the while, I worked harder than I'd ever worked in physical therapy. I practiced my speech exercises until my throat was raw. I forced my rebellious limbs to obey me again, bit by bit. My physical therapist, Lydia, was the only one who seemed to understand. "You're fighting like hell," she said one day, helping me take a few steps without the walker. "But what are you fighting for?" I looked at her, this young woman with kind eyes who had seen me struggle and persevere. "My freedom," I whispered. One afternoon, I overheard Lou and Emma in the hallway outside my room. "The lawyer says once the guardianship is approved, we can move forward with selling the house," Lou said. "The market's hot right now. We could get at least $400,000. What about Mom's retirement accounts? Emma asked. They're worth almost twice that. We'll divide everything equally, Louis assured her. It's what Mom would want. And if she objects? Emma's voice had an edge to it. Louis laughed softly. Look at her, Em. She can barely feed herself. The judge will take one look and grant us full control. It's for her own good anyway. I closed my eyes, letting their words sink in. For her own good, the phrase echoed in my mind, taunting me. That night, I made a decision. I would no longer be the victim of my children's betrayal. I would reclaim my life, my dignity, and yes, my assets. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was defeated. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, I asked to use the rehabilitation center's computer to check my email. Instead, I contacted the one person who might still be loyal to me, my late sister's husband, Frank. He had always been the black sheep of the family, living off the grid in a small coastal town. My children had never approved of him. Frank, I typed with painstaking slowness, I need help. My children are trying to take everything from me. Can you come? 3 days later, as I was struggling through another physical therapy session, Lydia leaned in close. There's a man in the lobby asking for you, she whispered. Says he's your brother-in-law. He looks unconventional. Frank had come. What happened next would change everything, but first, I needed to make my children believe they had already won. Frank looked exactly as I remembered him, weathered face, long gray hair tied back in a ponytail, and eyes that missed nothing. Awkwardly in my room, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, looking at me with a mixture of shock and concern. Jesus, Violet, he said, using my full name the way he always had. You look like hell. I couldn't help but laugh, though it came out as more of a croak. Always the charmer, Frank pulled a chair close to my bed. Unlike my children, he looked me straight in the eyes when he spoke. Your email scared me. Tell me what's happening. I told him everything. The stroke, the slow recovery, and the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical ailment could. Frank listened without interrupting, his expression darkening with each new detail. Those ungrateful little, he stopped himself. Sorry, but after everything you did for them, they see me as an inconvenience now, I said, the bitter truth of it stinging, an obstacle between them and my money. Frank shook his head. What do you need me to do? Violet, I need time, I said, and I need someone on the outside I can trust. They've frozen my accounts, but they don't know about everything. Years ago, after selling my late parents' farm, I had opened a separate account in a small credit union. It wasn't much, about $70,000, but my children knew nothing about it. It was my emergency fund, my security blanket. Now it would be my ticket to freedom. I've got a small place near the coast, Frank said. It's nothing fancy, just a cabin really, but it's quiet and nobody would think to look for you there. Perfect, I said, but first I need to get access to my credit union account before they find it, and I need to make them believe they've won. Over the next week, Frank became my co-conspirator. He brought me a prepaid phone that my children knew nothing about. When they visited, I played the role they expected, a helpless, confused mother who needed their guidance. I signed papers they put in front of me, nodding vacantly as they explained how they were simplifying my affairs. We found a wonderful assisted living facility, Mom, Emma said brightly one afternoon. It has activities, medical staff on site, everything you need. And we're making good progress selling the house, Louis added. The realtor thinks it will go quickly. I nodded, feigning gratitude. You're so good to your mother. After they left, I gripped my bedsheet so hard my knuckles turned white. Lydia noticed during our therapy session. You're tense today, she observed, helping me stretch my recovering limbs. Just motivated, I replied. And I was. Every day I pushed harder in therapy. Every day I grew stronger, both physically and in my resolve. Frank, meanwhile, was busy with our plan. He visited the credit union as my proxy with a notarized letter I had signed before my stroke. The small-town bank still operated on personal relationships rather than corporate policies. They remembered me from my parents' estate and were sympathetic to my situation. "The money has been moved to a new account," Frank reported, showing me a debit card with my name on it. "Only you can access it now." 2 weeks after Frank's arrival, my children had a surprise. For me, they arrived together, all three of them, a rare occurrence. "Mom, we have great news," Emma said, her voice honey-sweet. "The judge has approved our petition. We're officially your guardians now, which means we can make all the decisions about your care." Lewis added, as if explaining to a child, "You don't have to worry about a thing." "And we've sold the house," Dylan chimed in, looking up briefly from his phone. "Closed the deal yesterday over asking price." My home, the place where I had nursed them through fevers, celebrated birthdays, and mourned losses, gone just like that. "That's wonderful," I said, forcing a smile. "When do I move to the place you found?" "Sunny Pines," Emma supplied. "Next week. We've already packed up what you'll need." "How thoughtful," I said, and then added the piece de resistance. "I'm so lucky to have such caring children." They beamed, believing they had one. That night, I finalized the plan with Frank. My discharge from the rehabilitation center was scheduled for Monday. My children would come to collect me and take me straight to Sunny Pines. But I wouldn't be there when they arrived. Sunday night, after the staff had done their final checks, Frank wheeled me out through a side entrance where a friend of his waited with a van. It wasn't exactly a daring escape, more like a carefully timed exit, but my heart raced nonetheless. As we drove away from the center, I watched the building recede in the side mirror, a strange mix of emotions washing over me, fear, certainly, but also exhilaration. For the first time in months, I was making my own choices. Frank's cabin was 5 hours away, nestled in a small coastal town called Port Haven. We arrived as dawn was breaking, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. The cabin itself was rustic but clean, with a ramp Frank had hastily constructed for my wheelchair. "It's just temporary," he assured me, helping me inside. "Until you can manage the steps." "It's perfect," I said, meaning it. Through the windows, I could see the ocean in the distance, vast and boundless, like the future I was determined to reclaim. Frank had arranged for a local physical therapist to visit twice a week. Marguerite was semi-retired and happy to be paid in cash. She reminded me of myself, practical, no-nonsense, and unwilling to accept limitations. "So your family thinks you're tucked away in some facility?" she asked during our first session, helping me stand with the walker. "Yes," I replied, concentrating on placing one foot in front of the other. "And what happens when they discover you're gone?" I had thought about that moment countless times. They'll be angry, confused, maybe even worried, though I doubt it. Mostly, they'll be afraid I'll contest the guardianship and reclaim my assets. "And will you?" I took another step, then another. "Not yet. Let them think they've won. Let them fight among themselves over who gets what. I have something more important to focus on." "And what's that?" Marguerite asked. "Becoming strong enough to never need anyone's help again," I said, releasing the walker and taking my first unassisted step in months. What I didn't tell Marjorie, what I hadn't even fully admitted to myself, was that deep beneath my anger and determination lay a well of sadness so profound it threatened to swallow me whole. These were my children, my flesh and blood, and they had discarded me when I needed them most. But I would allow myself to feel that pain later. For now, I needed to focus on rebuilding myself one step at a time. I had no idea that my children's reaction to my disappearance would be far more extreme than I had anticipated, or that it would lead to consequences none of us could have foreseen. The first month at Frank's cabin passed in a rhythm of determination and pain. Every morning I woke before dawn, dragging myself through exercises before Marjorie arrived. Every afternoon, I practiced my speech, reading aloud from Frank's dog-eared paperbacks until my voice grew stronger. Every evening, I sat on the porch watching the sun set over the ocean, thinking about my children and the life I had left behind. Frank kept track of what was happening back home through an old friend who still lived in the area. The news came in fragments, each one revealing the chaos my disappearance had caused. They reported you missing, Frank told me one evening, setting a mug of tea beside me. Police got involved, but since the rehabilitation center staff saw you leave voluntarily, they're not treating it as an abduction. And my children? I asked. The word children tasted strange now, as if it belonged to a language I no longer spoke fluently. Apparently, they're pointing fingers at each other, Frank said. Dylan thinks Emma and Louis took you somewhere to cut him out of the inheritance. Emma's accusing Dylan of hiding you despite them. It's getting ugly. I should have felt satisfaction. Wasn't this what I wanted? For them to turn on each other, to face consequences for their betrayal? Instead, I felt a hollow grief for the family we once were, or perhaps for the family I had imagined we were. There's more, Frank hesitated. They've started spending the money. Lou bought a new car. Emma's renovating her kitchen. Dylan's talking about opening some kind of startup. My money, the savings from decades of careful living, the inheritance from my parents that I had preserved, the retirement fund I had built by taking extra shifts when the children were young, all being squandered. Let them, I said, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. Let them spend every penny. But it wasn't that simple. As my body grew stronger, the wound in my heart festered. I had nightmares where I was back in the rehabilitation center, unable to move or speak, watching my children sell my memories piece by piece. I woke gasping, the sheets damp with sweat. Port Haven began to feel like home, though it was a small town where people minded their own business, but were quick to offer help when needed. I started venturing out with Frank, first just to the local diner where the waitress, Darlene, always saved us the corner booth with the ocean view. You're looking better every day, honey, she'd say, refilling my coffee without asking. She was right. 3 months after my escape, I could walk with just a cane. My speech had lost its slur, though I still searched for words sometimes. I had started helping Frank with his woodworking business, keeping the books and managing orders. My experience as an accountant before the stroke made it easy work, and it gave me purpose. One morning in early autumn, I was sitting at Darlene's counter alone. Frank was delivering a custom table to a client in the next town when the bell above the door jingled. I didn't look up until I heard the voice. Mom? My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Dylan stood in the doorway, looking thin and harried, his eyes darting around the diner until they locked with mine. Time seemed to stop. The diner's chatter faded to a dull roar in my ears. How had he found me? What did he want? He approached slowly, as if I might bolt. Everyone's been looking for you, he said, sliding onto the stool beside me. We thought something terrible had happened. I set my cup down carefully, buying time to steady my voice. I left a note. His face flushed. If I'm a burden, you don't have to carry it anymore. That's not an explanation, Mom. That's cruel. I stared at him, this boy I had raised, this man who had been willing to lock me away and strip me of everything. Cruel is deciding I'm incompetent without even talking to me, I said quietly. Cruel is selling my home while I'm learning to walk again. Cruel is dividing my possessions like I'm already dead. Dylan had the decency to look ashamed. We were trying to help you. No, I said, my voice steady. You were helping yourselves. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. It wasn't like that, not for me anyway. Louis and Emma, they pushed for the guardianship. I just went along because the doctors said you needed full-time care. And the house, my car, my retirement accounts. I pressed. I know how it looks. He admitted, but things are falling apart now. Louis and Emma are suing each other over the money. They're saying terrible things, and the police were asking questions about elder abuse and fraud. We could all be in serious trouble. So that was it. He hadn't come because he missed me or because he was sorry. He'd come because there were consequences looming. What do you want from me, Dylan? He looked up, his eyes so like his father's, pleading. Come back. Tell everyone you left willingly, that you're fine, that we didn't do anything wrong. I laughed, a sharp sound that made heads turn in the diner. You want me to bail you out? To lie for you. Mom, please. We're your children. Those words again. Children, as if that relationship still meant what it once had. I need to think, I said finally. Where are you staying? The Harbor Inn, just down the street. Room 12. He stood hesitating. I really am glad you're okay. You look good, Mom. After he left, I sat for a long time. My coffee growing cold, Darlene refilled it without comment, just a gentle squeeze of my shoulder as she passed. That night, Frank found me at the edge of the water, watching the waves in the moonlight. Dylan found me, I said without preamble. Frank tensed. How? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I turned to face him. He wants me to come back and tell everyone I left voluntarily to save them from fraud investigations. And what do you want? It was a simple question, but it stopped me short. What did I want? Revenge? Peace? My old life back? My family restored? I want justice, I said finally, but I also want to be free of them. Frank nodded. Then maybe it's time to face them, not to save them, but to reclaim what's yours. The Violet I know wouldn't hide forever. He was right. I had run away to heal, to find strength, but staying hidden was starting to feel like another kind of prison. Will you come with me? I asked. Try and stop me, he smiled. I spent the night drafting a plan. I would return, but on my terms. I would confront my children, all of them, face to face. I would expose their lies and demand accountability. And then I would rebuild a life that belonged truly to me, not as a mother, not as a victim, but as Violet, whole and undiminished. The next morning, I called the number Dylan had left. I'll meet you, I said when he answered, but not alone. Tell Louie and Emma to be at the harbor in the conference room tomorrow at noon. All three of you? Mom, I don't think that's a good idea. Those are my terms, I cut him off. Tomorrow at noon, or I disappear again, this time for good. After I hung up, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Tomorrow would change everything. I just didn't realize how complete that change would be or the unexpected turn it would take when a stranger entered the equation. The harbor and conference room was bland and impersonal, beige walls, a long wooden table, and windows overlooking the parking lot rather than the ocean. It was the perfect setting for what I was about to do. Frank and I arrived 20 minutes early. He carried a briefcase containing documents we had spent all night preparing. You sure about this? He asked, setting up my laptop. Absolutely, I replied, though my heart was hammering. I smoothed my blouse, newly bought with my own money from the shop in town, and checked my reflection in the window. I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back at me had clear eyes and a determined set to her jaw. Gone was the confused, patient, betrayed mother. In her place stood someone stronger. At precisely noon, the door opened. Dylan entered first, followed by Emma and Louie. They froze when they saw me, expressions ranging from shock to weariness. Mom, Emma breathed, you look different. Strong enough to be declared competent, wouldn't you say? I replied coolly. Louie stepped forward, all business. Mom, we've been worried sick. The police have been investigating us, as if we did something wrong. Didn't you? I cut him off. We were trying to protect you, Emma insisted. The doctors said you'd need full T. I care that you might never fully recover, and yet here I am. I gestured to myself, walking, talking, managing my own affairs. Who's this? Louis nodded toward Frank, my advocate. I said simply, please sit down. We have a lot to discuss. Reluctantly, they took seats across from us. I noticed they spaced themselves apart, no longer a united front. The cracks in their solidarity were visible. I know what you did, I began. I know about the guardianship petition filed behind my back. I know about the sale of my house. I know about the emptying of my accounts. Mom, it wasn't like that, Dylan started. I held up my hand. I'm not finished. I also know that you've been spending my money fighting amongst yourselves and now facing potential legal consequences. Their faces showed varying degrees of guilt and defiance. "What do you want?" Lewis asked bluntly, always the pragmatist. "Justice," I said, opening the laptop. "Frank, would you mind?" Frank turned the screen to face my children. On it was a video of me recorded the previous day, giving a detailed account of everything that had happened since my stroke, including their betrayal. My voice was clear, my mental acuity obvious. "I've sent this to my attorney in the city," I explained as the video played, along with medical evaluations from my current physical therapist and doctor here in Port Haven confirming my competence. "You're suing us?" Emma's voice rose an octave. "No," I said. "I'm giving you a choice." I slid 3 identical folders across the table, one for each of them. "These contain agreements. You will return every penny you took from my accounts. You will transfer the proceeds from the house sale to me. In exchange, I won't press charges for elder abuse and financial fraud." The silence was deafening. Louis was the first to recover, flipping through his folder with a scowl. "This is extortion." "This is accountability," I corrected him, "something you 3 seem unfamiliar with." "We don't have all the money," Dylan admitted quietly. "Most of it has been spent." "Then you'll have to find it," I said unmoved. "Sell the car, Louis. Stop the renovations, Emma. Liquidate your startup assets, Dylan." "This isn't fair." Emma's eyes welled with tears, always her go-to tactic when cornered. "We were scared for you. We made mistakes, but we didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't you?" I leaned forward. "Tell me, when you were dividing my possessions, the china that was your grandmother's, the art your father and I collected, the furniture I saved for years to buy, did you think about how I would feel? Or did you only think about what you would gain?" None of them could meet my eyes. "I gave everything to you 3, I continued, my voice softer but no less firm. "Not just material things, time, love, opportunities one never had. And when I needed you, just once in all those years, you saw me as a burden to be managed, an inconvenience to be handled, an asset to be divided. The truth hung in the air between us, undeniable. "You have 3 days to sign these agreements," I said, standing. "If you don't, the video goes public. To the authorities, along with all the documentation of what you've done." As I turned to leave, the door to the conference room opened unexpectedly. A man I'd never seen before stood in the doorway, tall with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Sorry, I'm looking for Violet Taylor," he said, glancing around the room. "That's me," I said, confused. "Dr. George Morgan," he extended his hand. "I've been consulting on stroke recovery cases at Port Haven Medical. Your therapist, Marjorie, asked me to review your case, and I've been trying to reach you." Before I could respond, Emma was on her feet. "You're her doctor? Then you can tell her she needs proper care, not whatever this is." She gestured dismissively at Frank. Dr. Morgan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Actually, I reviewed Mrs. Taylor's case specifically because Marjorie was impressed with her recovery. It's quite remarkable, really." He turned to me. "Would you have time to discuss your progress? I'd like to document your case for a study I'm conducting on non-traditional recovery paths." I felt a strange flutter in my chest, pride. I realized my recovery, my strength, was being recognized as something special. "I'd be happy to," I said, surprising myself. "Perfect." His smile was warm. "I'm staying at this inn as well. Perhaps dinner around 7. I was aware of my children watching this exchange, their expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief. This wasn't part of the script they had written for me, the helpless mother, the burden. 7 would be lovely, I agreed. After Dr. Morgan left, I turned back to my children. 3 days, I reminded them, then walked out with Frank close behind. In the hallway, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Do you think they'll sign?" "They don't have much choice," Frank said. "You've got them cornered." It should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt a complicated mixture of sadness and relief. "I never thought it would come to this," I admitted, threatening my own children. "They made their choices," Frank reminded me gently. "Now they have to live with the consequences." That evening, as I prepared for my dinner with Dr. Morgan, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years, taking care with my appearance, not for anyone else's benefit, but for my own. I wore a blue dress that brought out my eyes, applied a touch of lipstick, and styled my hair, still growing back after they'd cut it short at the rehabilitation center. The woman in the mirror looked alive, vibrant. Despite everything, or perhaps because of everything, the stroke, the betrayal, the escape, they had stripped away pretenses and left behind someone stronger, someone who knew her own worth. I had no idea then that dinner with Dr. Morgan would open a door to possibilities I hadn't even considered, or that my children's response to my ultimatum would be more complex and dangerous than I could have imagined. Dinner with Dr. Morgan was unexpected in every way. I had anticipated a clinical discussion about my recovery, perhaps questions about my therapy. Instead of my therapy regimen, I found myself sitting across from a man who seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not just a case study. "So, Violet," he said after we'd ordered, "tell me about your life before all this." It was such a simple question, yet it caught me off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked about me, not my condition or my needs or my assets? I told him about my career as an accountant, my passion for gardening, and the traveling I'd done when the children were grown. I surprised myself by laughing as I recounted stories from before the stroke, memories I'd buried beneath the weight of betrayal. "You've had quite a journey," he said, his eyes warm. "Most people wouldn't have had the courage to do what you did. Escape, rebuild, confront." I didn't feel brave, I admitted. I felt desperate. "Sometimes bravery and desperation look remarkably similar," he replied. We talked for hours, long after our plates were cleared. It wasn't romantic exactly, but it was something I hadn't experienced in years: connection, understanding, respect. As he walked me back to my cabin, he asked, "What will you do after your children sign the agreements?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. "Start over, I suppose, somewhere new." "You could stay here," he suggested. "Port Haven could use someone with your resilience and accounting skills." His smile was gentle. "Think about it." That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of my usual nightmares, but because my mind was racing with possibilities: a new home, perhaps a small accounting practice helping local businesses, friends like Darlene and Marjorie, maybe even something more with George Morgan. For the first time since the stroke, I was thinking about my future rather than mourning my past. The next morning, Frank found me on the porch watching the sunrise. "You look different," he observed, handing me a mug of coffee. "Good different." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I might be ready to move on." He nodded. "I got a call this morning from Dylan. He says they want to meet again, all three of them." My stomach tightened. "Did they sign the agreements?" He didn't say, just asked for another meeting today at noon. Same place. I took a deep breath. "Then we'll go one last time." The conference room felt smaller today, more suffocating. My children were already there when we arrived, sitting together on one side of the table. Their unity made me wary. "Thank you for coming, Mom," Louis began, using his negotiation voice, the one he developed in law school. "We've discussed your proposal." I sat across from them, Frank beside me, and Emma pushed forward a stack of papers. My agreements, I realized, each one signed. "We're returning everything," she said quietly. "The money from the house, what's left in the accounts. We've arranged to sell back what we purchased." I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt a hollow ache. Why the change of heart? "We talked all night," Dylan said. "Really talked for the first time in years about what we did, why we did it." He looked down. "About how we failed you. It wasn't just about the money," Emma added. "It was fear, I think. After your stroke, seeing you so vulnerable, it was easier to take control than to face how easily we could lose you." "That doesn't excuse what we did," Louis said, his usual confidence absent, "but we want to make it right." He hesitated. "If you'll let us." I studied their faces, looking for deception. What I saw instead was something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse. This isn't just about avoiding criminal charges, I asked. No, Dylan shook his head. It's about trying to be worthy of being your children again, if that's even possible. I felt tears threatening, not tears of pain or anger, but something more complex. It won't be easy, I said finally. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight. We know. Emma reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. But we want to try, if you'll give us a chance. I looked at Frank, who gave me a slight nod. This was my decision to make. I'll accept the agreements, I said carefully, and I'm willing to explore reconciliation slowly, on my terms. The relief in the room was palpable, but I wasn't finished. There are conditions, I continued. First, I'm not moving back. My life is here now. Here. Louis looked confused. In Port Haven? Yes. The certainty in my voice surprised even me. I'm starting over here. I've been offered space to open a small accounting practice. This wasn't strictly true yet, but I had made my decision during our conversation. Second, if we're going to rebuild our relationship, it will be as adults, equals. I'm not just your mother. I'm a person with my own life, dreams, and choices. They nodded, though I could see the adjustment in their eyes. They had never seen me this way before. Finally, I said I want family therapy, all of us together. If we're going to heal this, we do it properly. There was a moment of silence, then Dylan spoke. That's fair, all of it. We spent the next hour discussing logistics, the transfer of funds, the legal paperwork to revoke the guardianship, the scheduling of therapy sessions. It was civil, even warm at moments. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps its precursor. As they prepared to leave, Emma hesitated. We noticed you had dinner with someone last night. I felt a flush rise to my cheeks. De Morgan? He's interested in my recovery. Is that all he's interested in? Louis asked, a hint of his old teasing self emerging. That, I said with dignity, is none of your business. Yet their surprised laughter followed me out of the room. Later that day, I stood at the edge of the water, watching waves crash against the shore. Frank joined me, hands in his pockets. Well, that didn't go how I expected, he admitted. Life rarely does, I replied. 6 months ago, I thought my story was ending. Now, I gestured to the horizon. Now I realize it's just beginning. What will you do first? He asked. I smiled. Call Dr. Morgan. I believe I owe him an answer about staying in Port Haven. That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, I sat on my porch with a fresh cup of tea and a notebook. In it, I began to write. Marks the first day of my new life, not as a victim, not as a mother whose children betrayed her, but as Violet Taylor, a survivor, entrepreneur, and woman who refused to be discarded. The stroke tried to take my future, my children tried to take my independence, but in losing everything, I found something I never expected, myself. Tomorrow, I sign the lease on a small office in town. Next week, I have my first family therapy session, and tonight, I have dinner with a man who sees me as I am now, not as I was. I don't know what happens next in this story, but for the first time in decades, I'm writing it myself. I closed the notebook, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust with my children would take time. Starting a business at my age, after all I'd been through, would be challenging, and whatever was beginning with George would require courage I wasn't sure I had. But I had survived betrayal. I had reclaimed my strength, my voice, my dignity. Whatever came next, I would face it standing firmly on my own 2 feet in a life that belonged, at last, completely to me.